Remember, entertainment purposes only. Now let's have some fun, okay? Now, we're going to look at the logic between modern science and ancient alchemy. And we're going to realize that the body is the vessel. And we're going to take the sorcerer's stone, iodine, and we're going to use seaweed as our iodine supplier. I imagine they probably used a technique in ancient times, because it is written that they extracted sorcerer's stone from plants. Seaweed contains, you bake it down and add sulfuric acid, heat it up, you get your iodine at the other end, your purple thing, and you can make a drink. The purple drink, the golden drink. And if you spend years collecting your urine during said process, because I mean there's only, well, you'll see. Now just remember, this is for entertainment purposes only. Although the science is factual, although the science is real, although the science is proven fact, this is for entertainment purposes only. Why? Because people are ridiculous. And, let's have some fun with this. Because, I mean, there's a patent by Immorta Bio for this same process. But you can do it for free, but you're going to get convinced for the rest of your life that you have to pay millions of dollars for this process. And one could live to 3 to 5 to who knows how long, many years. This makes you question whether Jesus Christ still walks this fucking earth. That's what it's meant to do. It makes you question if the man that he cursed still walks this earth. Makes you wonder if John is still alive. If all these ancient demigods are still alive and rich and wealthy and healthy. Why? Because, I mean, if modern science is saying these things, we need to question whether or not the reality of things. That's the funniest part about the whole situation is, what if they're still alive? Now let's get to the presentation.
Let's jump right into this explainer, because today we are unpacking something truly wild. We're looking at the reality that multi-million-dollar longevity biotech is actually running the exact same biological playbook as ancient alchemists. Seriously, the absolute cutting edge of modern science is suddenly looking a whole lot like a 1,000-year-old manuscript. So we're going to break down exactly how and why that is.
There's this fantastic quote from our sources that really hits the nail on the head. It says, "It is interesting to see that a book from 1,000 years ago dictates what they're doing in modern times to achieve what they said they achieved thousands of years ago." It perfectly bridges those esoteric ancient texts, the ones obsessing over transmuting base elements and achieving biological immortality, directly into today's advanced cellular biology. We're literally watching history validate itself under a microscope.
And that brings us to a massive, mind-bending question. Could the secret to a 300-year lifespan already be hidden right there in our own endogenous hardware? Like, we really have to ask ourselves, do we actually need expensive, lab-created therapies? Or can we run this entire life-extending process using just our own internal biological engine? Well, here's our roadmap for figuring that out. We're going to cover 1. The alchemist's secret. 2. Two-part longevity architecture. 3. The open-source senolytic. 4. The endogenous rebuild. 5. Mining the biological gold. And finally, 6. The seaweed superloop.
Section 1. The alchemist's secret. So, ancient alchemists were absolutely obsessed with finding the elixir of life, right? And they tried to do it through extreme purification and feeding rituals. Well, today, we know that these ancient rituals of purification and rebirth perfectly mirror modern cellular regeneration pathways. Those old texts talking about deep fasting and, even stem cell-rich urine therapies. They weren't just magic spells. They were early coded biology. They didn't have microscopes to look at cells, sure, but they totally understood the metabolic levers. They knew the fountain of youth was something you triggered from the inside.
Section 2. Two-part longevity architecture.
Fast forward to today, and modern biotech companies, like Immorta Bio, have basically commercialized those exact ancient protocols into a 2-part patented process. It's essentially bottling up extreme metabolic stress. In the lab, they use a product called Xenovax to kill off dead senescent zombie cells, and then follow it up with stem cell revivify to flood the body with fresh stem cells to rebuild the tissue. But look at the ancient natural process, purifying through deep fasting and feed with endogenous stem cells. Clearing out dead cells so they don't stick around and feed cancer, and then flooding the system with stem cells, it's literally what the ancients just called purify and feed. Same exact architecture, just centuries apart.
Section 3. The open source senolytic. Okay, so here's the best part. You can bypass that whole commercial model entirely through something called autophagy. Think of autophagy as your body's internal demolition crew. It hunts down damaged cellular machinery and those senescent zombie cells and just uses them for fuel. This self-eating mechanism, that is the exact cellular purification the alchemists were triggering with their extreme metabolic stress. When you stop giving your body external food, it just turns around and starts cleaning house internally.
Let's look at the exact biological blueprint for this. You've got the engine and the target. Fasting is your engine. It drops your insulin to zero and spikes an energy-sensing enzyme called AMPK, which flips the switch for autophagy. Boom, the demolition crew is awake. Then you add iodine as the target. Iodine displaces toxic halogens and heavy metals, causing apoptosis, which is just a fancy word for pushing mutated cells into programmed cell death. So by pairing a strict water fast with iodine, you're building a massive engine that flushes toxins out through urine, while actively forcing abnormal cells to self-destruct. It's an incredible physiological sweep.
Section 4. The endogenous rebuild. Once you've cleared the junk, the rebuild happens in 3 distinct steps. Step 1 is the primer. Fasting drops a growth hormone called IGF-1, which actually wakes your dormant stem cells up to burn fat and shields them during the detox. Step 2 is the trigger. This is the massive cellular energy spike that happens when you finally reintroduce nutrients during your refeed. And then step 3 is the map. You have to use mechanical tension, think high-volume squats or push-ups, to physically tear muscle fibers. That physical tearing sends a precise chemical signal, directing that awakened army of stem cells exactly where they need to go to rebuild. Clear the board, wake them up, give them a map. No lab required at all.
Section 5. Mining the biological gold.
Now, connecting this physiological rebuild back to the alchemist's ultimate metaphor, transmuting base elements into literal gold, is where things get really fascinating. Get this, according to the science, the average adult human body contains exactly 0.2 milligrams of literal pure gold. We actually absorb these microscopic amounts right from the earth through the plants and vegetables we eat. But to put that into perspective for a second, 0.2 milligrams of purified human gold forms a microscopic cube measuring just 0.22 millimeters across. That is roughly the size of the period at the end of a sentence. So yeah, while you do technically excrete trace, nanoliter amounts of this gold in your urine during a deep fast and iodine flush, the volume is way too small to make you rich. You wouldn't have even been able to buy a loaf of bread in ancient Rome with that.
But actually, that's the twist. The real treasure here is true biological transmutation. It's about flushing out actual toxic heavy metals like literal lead and mercury from your system. By clearing out all that physical static and toxic resistance, you are left with an uncorrupted, highly conductive biological network. And that allows your stem cells to communicate, navigate, and rebuild tissue super efficiently. The alchemist's secret was never about extracting physical wealth, it was about purifying the biological hardware so your body's regenerative loop remains totally unbroken. The gold was the indestructible engine they built inside themselves.
Section 6. The seaweed superloop.
So the final piece of this puzzle is the natural marine-based dietary protocol that fuels this whole biological engine over time. We can categorize these marine hyperaccumulators into 2 distinct toolkits. On one side, we have brown seaweeds like kombu and wakame. These act as your massive iodine flush. They decalcify the pineal gland and trigger the detox. On the other side, we have the red seaweeds like Irish sea moss, dulse, and nori. These are your trace mineral vaults and stem cell scaffolds, and they actually bind to the heavy metals you're flushing out. Brown seaweed provides the ocean's iodine to clear the system, while the red seaweed delivers the exact minerals and amino acids you need to rebuild it.
If you're looking to design the absolute ultimate refeed meal to break your fast, it's a 3-step process. 1. The primer, a warm kombu broth for a massive iodine strike that wakes up the digestive tract. 2. The binder, a wakame and dulce salad to grab onto any heavy metals getting dumped into your gut. And 3. The scaffold, high-quality seafood wrapped in nori, washed down with Irish sea moss gel to supply a complete vault of trace minerals. That right there is the perfect alchemical refeed meal, delivering the maximum density of raw elements directly to your newly awakened stem cell network. But hey, a very quick word of caution here regarding something called the Wolff-Chaikov effect. Kombu is so unbelievably dense with iodine that if you introduce it too aggressively, you can actually temporarily shock your thyroid. So while this closed natural loop is incredibly powerful, you really have to introduce these dense marine nutrients slowly. Give your body time to adapt so you don't overwhelm your system.
And remember, you gotta play the long game here. When you stretch this out, here's how the timeline builds. At 24 hours, you trigger that autophagic demolition. Between 1 to 3 months, your fat cells fully shrink and dump all their sequestered toxins. But it takes 6 to 12 months for bone, tendon, and deep fascial tissues to completely remodel their cellular structure. It proves the ancient texts right again. They explicitly said it takes a full year to see the true value. You need a year of cycling this protocol to completely replace sluggish, senescent tissue with a hyper-efficient, decalcified network.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with this. If transmuting your biological hardware could truly grant you centuries of pristine health, what would you do with your next 300 years? Because when you stop just fighting disease and start building an indestructible biological engine from the inside out, you might just have to rethink absolutely everything about how you plan to live your life. Thanks for diving into this with me.